Okay, hello. We are going to continue with our conversation or my monologue about ethos and um, how ethos is really composed of three parts: disinterest, virtue, and practical wisdom. And I've talked about this in, you know, parts before, but I want to go over um, this chapter a little bit in more depth. I think this is chapter 16. Um, but in terms of disinterest, having the interest of your audience at heart, that you care about your audience. Virtue, that you have a belief in something um, greater than yourself, and also practical wisdom. So, disinterest, whose interest do you have? In the example that they use in the book, they talk about um, the wife going to a salesman and she wants to buy her husband a gift. And the salesman, she can only spend $20, but the salesman starts steering her in another direction that is, much higher than that. Um, what seems to be, at first, initially, a salesperson having the customer's interest at heart, when it's revealed that the salesman doesn't have their interest at heart, a person loses faith. A person loses faith in that speaker's ethos. So, um, as best you can, and in as honest a way as you can, it's always ideal to let your audience know, to reassure your audience, and to really have your audience's best interests at heart. Um, in terms of virtue, the way that the author defines virtue, a state of character concerned with choice and lying in a mean. And I think it is a really great definition because it deals with so many of the aspects of rhetoric that he's been talking about throughout this book. So, a state of character, a state of character that you're able to adapt. You're the, where you are at, the state of where you are at is adaptable. You're flexible to whatever rhetorical situation, it is, whatever the demands are. So, one aspect of virtue is being flexible, being able to adapt to the particular moral viewpoint of your audience. Not that you have to agree with their moral stance, but you've got to acknowledge where they are on the moral spectrum. So, to adapt. And so, a state of character concerned with choice. That you're concerned with presenting your audience with a choice. That you're not trying to just, ramrod them into seeing things one way. And so you don't use threats. You don't use ultimatums. You don't use punishment. You present the facts. You try to present more than one side so that you give your audience a chance to decide for themselves. You can let your audience know what side you are on an issue, but you don't just leave out pertinent information that would be informative to your audience either. So if you are a virtuous speaker, even if you're trying to be persuasive, you're still trying to offer your audience a choice, and that may seem strange, but in the end, ultimately, it will only benefit you that you offer your audience more than one way to look at a situation, because they will trust you more and trust that you are giving them the full picture. And so, state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean, like it's situated in a mean, in an average place. That if you're a virtuous speaker, you are interested in where the majority of your audience is. If 10 people in the room are all on, 8 out of 10 people in the room are of one opinion on an issue that you're talking about, that if you want to appear to be a trustworthy, ethical person, then you're going to respond to where people are at and not force an extremely different viewpoint on them. So the middle way, you try to assess the situation, try to figure out where most people are, and try to tap into that, acknowledge that. Again, not that you have to agree with it. If most people in the room are pro-life and you're pro-choice, it doesn't mean you have to just deny or lie about where you stand. But to be able to find a way to connect with where they're at and acknowledge where they're at is a huge step in terms of bridging that gap. between you and your audience. And you'll have a much better chance of connecting with them if you can acknowledge where the majority of your audience is at. So the middle way. And along with that, I like his comment about how extremists describe the middle course as extreme. You know that you're dealing with an extremist when they're painting a very distorted picture of just a very average choice. You know, if they paint a picture of the other side in exaggerated, inflammatory words, then you probably should be somewhat suspicious that this person's facts or point of view are even really reliable. So, you know, people that may go around, you know, talking about those gun-toting, red-necked, inbred country music singing fools, you know, depicting the far right as that, you know, seeing conservatives as that is an extreme picture. You're painting an extreme picture of right-wing conservative Republicans, you know. But on the other hand, as well, if you were referring to left liberals, progressives as those elitists, PC, bleeding hearts, quinoa growing, granolas, you know, those kind of hot button words that we've heard referred to, you know, either liberals or conservatives, you know, painting that extreme picture makes the person saying those words appear to be extremists. So just be careful. You know, when you start to talk in extremes, your audience may think less and less of you in terms of being a virtuous speaker. So, and the third part, craft. Um, how do you assess craft? He talks about three different ways. Craft being practical wisdom. If a speaker has practical wisdom, you trust them more. So that depends. Um, and we're getting a little bit worried that this video is going to run out. So I'm going to pause and make a second video to complete this little lecture. So hold on just a moment.